Hello and welcome to Positively United. Today, Thursday, the 22nd of January 2026, and without a shadow of a doubt, the biggest story that's broken today is that this season will be Casemiro's last season at Manchester United. In, I think, what can only be described as an incredibly dignified way, both the club and Casemiro announced that decision earlier today. Casemiro's contract won't be extended by a year. When the current contract ends at the end of this season, Casemiro will leave the club. And I do wonder whether the timing of this is a direct consequence of all the rumours that started to spread yesterday and all the conversation that started yesterday about whether Casemiro could automatically trigger an additional year on his contract if he played all 17 of the remaining games that Manchester United have left to play this season. And I think as almost certainly that's the reason why that the announcement was made today, because otherwise I can't understand why they would have announced it today. My guess is a decision had been made quite some time ago, but they decided to make the announcement today because they didn't want that speculation which had developed yesterday to drag on until the end of the season. I think it would have been a pretty undignified way to Casemiro to end his time at United with constant speculation. Is he playing today? And if he wasn't, is he being dropped because of a contract extension? It would have been really undignified. I think the way the club and Casemiro have handled it today, absolutely superb. And a massive thank you to Casemiro. I think he's been an absolute fan favourite since he joined. Yes, he's been through some difficult times since he's been at United, but he's battled himself through them, and he's shown himself to be an absolute model professional. Everything I hear about Casemiro behind the scenes is that he's absolutely adored at the club with people from all levels of the club, an incredibly popular character. You can understand why. He carries himself off so well. I'll miss him. I think it's an incredibly sad day, but it is the right decision. It is the right decision without a doubt. And I think it has consequences. It pretty much means, doesn't it, that Mainoo's a guaranteed new contract? It has to be. Because if you imagine a summer where Casemiro leaves, Mainoo leaves, and it's highly likely that Ugarte will leave, United would lose all three of their senior midfield pivot players. That's just inconceivable. Just can't possibly happen. So it suggests to me that Mainoo's an absolute nailed-on certainty to have a new contract. I also would suggest it means that Manchester United know absolutely that they're going to buy a midfielder this summer, and that this would be my guess, they probably already know who that midfielder is, and they probably already know that the deal is done. Just a supposition of mine, but I can't imagine this happening and being announced now without United being pretty certain that they've got a major midfielder lined up in the summer. We'll wait and see. But it's either that or they are absolutely determined almost at any cost to get that top quality double pivot midfielder in the summer. I think that's pretty much nailed on. So incredibly important announcement, and it definitely became the news item of the day. But the day had started with a completely different story, and one I'd like to spend a little bit of time on during the rest of this show today. It was the announcement of the Deloitte Football Money League for 2026. So these are the figures that are based on last season, so season 2014-2015. Sorry, 2024 season, 2024-2025. And they're dreadful for United. They really are. I mean, this channel's called Positively United, but it isn't called Delusional United. I'll try and look for the positives wherever I can, but I don't believe there are any here. One of the there aren't that many people who will stand up for the Glazers, and I'm certainly not one of them. I'd love to see them out of our club. But when criticism of the Glazers comes along, one of the things that people do put up in their defence has been, well, things might not have been great on the field, but look at your money. You're still dragging in revenue. The revenue is still pouring in. Well, it might be pouring in, but it's not pouring in as well as it used to in comparison to other clubs. Let me show you where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we were top of this table, with Barcelona second, Real Madrid third, Man City fifth. Look at Liverpool in ninth. Look at the situation now. We're down to eighth in 10 years, from first to eighth. And look, Liverpool have leapfrogged us into fifth position. Look at the enormous gap there now is between us in eighth and Real Madrid in first. Billion in revenue, 1.1 billion in revenue, 793 million. As I said, that excuse, the only excuse I think it's always been used about the Glazers, is they're good at the money. They bring the money in, they bring the revenue in. All those sponsorship deals are still being signed, all those shirt sponsors, the database sponsors, the Man United whiskey sponsor, the bed mattress sponsor. It's all still being signed. Well, that excuse is now wearing really thin. In fact, I think it's so thin it's worn out. If the Glazers ever were really that good at money, they're certainly no good at it now. Now, of course, I'm sure some people will say, but it's not just Ineos. It's not just the Glazers now, is it? It's Ineos too. It's Ineos. Well, that might well be, but I tell you what, these figures certainly paint Ineos's actions over the last 2 years in a much more realistic light. Why has Ineos been so keen on keeping such a tight rein on costs? Why did it make all those horrific redundancies? Why has it cut things down to the bone? I tell you why, because behind the scenes, they know where this direction of travel has been going. They can see that Manchester United is going downhill when it comes to its finances. And just like any good business is run, and Ineos is a very good business, it knows that revenue is vanity, profit is reality. You can have fantastic revenue figures, but if your costs are too high, you just eat into the profit. I think Manchester United are in real trouble when it comes to their finances. I think this is an indicator of it. And this has been a long-term decline during the Glazers' reign of terror. In 2017 and 2018, we were top of this table. Fell to third in 2019, third again in 2020. We were down to fourth in 2021. Fifth in 2022, back up to fourth in 2023, fifth in 2024, fourth last year, down to eighth this year. Squint hard enough, look at that trend line. It's remorselessly downhill. Now, this is undoubtedly in part due to United's lack of success on the field. It was an absolute myth that United could carry on underperforming in competitions and still bring in revenue at the rate that it used to. You know, we've got a global fan base now. There's a huge difference from being a fan in Manchester or the northwest of England or the northwest and North Wales or the rest of the United Kingdom. Closer you are, the more loyal you are. But if you're a fan and this is no disrespect to fans around the world, but if you're a fan in, I don't know, South Africa or China or America or Japan or Australia, and United starts to underperform, there are an awful lot of alternatives around, and they're more visible than ever with the Premier League being so popular. It isn't a huge jump of the imagination to imagine that a father who has a son in Australia or China or Japan and who's a Manchester United fan will find his son or daughter supporting, God forbid, Manchester City because they're winners. And that will hit revenue. Because if you buy the replica shirt of the club you support, you buy the souvenirs of the club you support. Manchester United's lack of success on the field is now directly impacting its financial capabilities. That's clear for all to see. And these figures that place us 8th in this table are from last season, where we got to the Europa Cup final, the Europa League final, and we weren't eliminated in the first rounds of the League Cup and the FA Cup. We're going to play this season the lowest number of games we played in over 100 years. Can you imagine where we're going to be on this list next year? We might even be out of a top 10. Because if you look at the table, Tottenham are behind us. Chelsea are behind us. Now, granted, I can't see Tottenham passing us, but Chelsea could. This is serious news for United. It really is. And it is an absolute Glazer fail. Now, I must admit, I'm not a fan of the phrase Ineos. I think Ineos are completely different from the Glazers. I think Ineos absolutely want the club to succeed on the pitch. I'm convinced of that. The Glazers, they don't give a stuff. All they care about is the money. The irony of these figures is that it might actually make the Glazers worried for the first time. That the goose that lays the golden egg is looking a little bit unwell. Maybe not quite as capable of pushing out golden eggs as it used to. Maybe it'll make them take notice. Nothing has made them take notice up until now. Maybe the fact that they're 8th on this list rather than 1st or even 4th or 5th might make them start to think about the success on the field and its clear link to financial success, off a link that they've ignored almost for as long as they've owned this football club. So I can't even pretend it's a positive episode tonight. It's not. These are worrying stats. They should concern us all. And I'm hoping they concern the Glazers, because they need to start seeing that sustained poor performance on the pitch will hit them. And I've always believed that the thing that will make the Glazers nervous is financial performance. I don't think they're particularly concerned about demonstrations, although they ought to happen, but I don't know how concerned they are about demonstrations or the words of fan groups. But they'll be worried about their money, and the money's not looking good. If you like what I do on this channel, please like the video, subscribe. By the way, if you subscribe, please think about subscribing to my X channel as well. There's a link in the description. Very few followers on X, but I do post there every day. So if you're following the YouTube channel, please consider following me on X too. If you like what I do and you think somebody else that you know who follows United would like to watch these videos too, please let them know about the channel and try and persuade them to subscribe as well. If you want to make a contribution to what I'm doing on this channel, then I've set up a coffee account. Please consider donating, however small. Everything would be gratefully received. And until next time, if you can, remain positively United, because you never know, perhaps for Glazers, money really does talk. See you next time.